Thank you. Is this on? Okay. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's
I don't know if I need this, but I'm going to use it anyway. Can you hear me in the back? Okay, cool. So that was a little improvisation, going through what I call the 4 food groups. A little bit of free music, a little bit of jazz, which sort of in the same thing, and then I went into a little bit of South American rhythms, including samba and another rhythm called candombe. Then I went into an Afro-Cuban rhythm, and I finally wound up in sort of a funk vein. Anyway, that's just a little improv. It's kind of fun to do that sometimes, just go on a journey and see where it takes you. But now, as promised, I wanted to ask you some questions about where you are at with your playing and where you want to go. Why don't I start with you?
Me?
So well, either one of you, because you're both drummers.
Yeah.
So, what would you say is, what's the number one thing you want to work on?
Probably like Brazilian and Cuban rhythms.
Brazilian Afro-Cuban rhythms. Okay, cool. So I'll do a little survey. Anything, Rob, that you like? Are there any struggles or interests?
I'm always trying to get my left hand better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brazilian Afro-Cuban.
Come
left
closer
hand.
to this hand, right?
Okay. Anybody else? Would you like to? Think about what you'd like to be able to do or what you're struggling with, and let me know what that is. And sometimes it takes a second to realize what it is. Anybody?
Portland Independence.
Okay, cool. Yeah. What else? And that's quite enough right there. But if you think of anything, just raise your hand and let me know what you're working on or what you want to be able to do, what you're struggling with. So let's start with Brazilian Afro-Cuban. You all probably saw that there was a little QR code that you can scan when you come in. It's not to order food, it's to order rhythm. So you can, that will lead you to another masterclass I did strictly on that topic. And that includes a link to PDFs. So you get on my mailing list and you get that as your free gift. So let's start with Brazilian rhythms. I started playing Brazilian rhythms around 1981. I was living in Chicago, and there's a Brazilian band that needed a sub for the regular drummer. And it was some Brazilians that moved up from Porto Alegre, Brazil in the south. And they sounded great. The band was called Made in Brazil. And I started doing the gig, and I knew nothing about Brazilian music. It just so happens that the singer was working at the Brazilian consulate during the day, and one of her colleagues used to come to the gigs, and he started giving me cassette tapes of all this Brazilian music. So I started getting immersed in it. And so I think this is a really important thing for you to do. Whatever it is you want to do, immerse yourself in it, and you'll learn a lot about how you can get there. At least you can learn the music if it's a particular style you want to get into. Okay, so Brazilian music is sort of a generic term because there's a lot of styles within Brazil. But 2 of the styles that I started playing with that band were samba and bossa nova. And samba is mostly based on 2 percussion instruments. The rhythm of samba, the heartbeat of samba, the soul of samba is based on the surdo, which is the bass drum, and a small frame drum about this big called the tamborim. And the surdo and tamborim wind up being on the bass drum when you play samba on the drum set. And if you play a cross stick pattern, that's the tamborim part. So I want to talk about samba a little bit because I think everybody's heard bossa nova at one time or another. Are you all familiar with the Girl from Ipanema? Yeah. One of the most famous tunes in the world. You know, like even the gangsters request that at some gigs. And we always play it. But bossa is basically, if you're wondering what the difference between bossa and samba is, there's no difference. It's the same thing. It's just a variant of samba. So, but it's a more subtle, softer version of samba. So it's not like hundreds of percussionists marching in the streets playing a bossa nova. It's more like one guitarist, maybe drum set player, possibly a shaker player, bass, singer. It's more that format. But it's still the rhythm of samba. The rhythm is exactly the same, it's just a different aesthetic. So, I'm going to explain the surdo pattern. And one thing about Brazilian samba is that whereas in a lot of popular music here, we have the accent on 1 and 3. But it's reversed in samba. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, that's a very generic way of looking at it, but that's where the main accent is. Now, when you get into the phrasing, that's a whole other thing, but I'll show you a basic surdo pattern. This is the bass drum, and it looks kind of like this floor tom. Sometimes it's bigger, and they're portable. They come with, straps, and they hook the straps on. Quite often they're made of metal, and they're light. They need to be because they're going to be carrying them. So I mentioned the hundreds of percussionists playing in a carnival. The carnival is the Mardi Gras of Brazil, of course, and all these communities form their own groups called escolas, like schools, samba schools, like in the sense of school of fish, like a group. And they make their own costumes, and they work out their own songs, and they rehearse for months on end, no written music, and then they compete against each other during the carnival. So you'll hear a couple hundred percussionists down the street, and there are people directing them with whistles and everything, trying to keep all these percussionists together, because the people that judge them are way up in these rafters, and they see them as a unit. If you're down there in it, all you hear are the people right next to you because it's so loud. But if you're up there, you hear the whole group. So they really have to keep all those percussionists together. Sometimes it's hard keeping 2 percussionists together. Imagine like 250. So anyway, here's a surdo pattern. And like I said, the emphasis is going to be on beat 2. So I'm going to count this in 2/4. So it's going to be 1, 2, 1, 2. So the first note, and it's usually played with a mallet, bigger mallet. It's a super easy way to play this on a floor tom or a bass drum is hand first, and then open it up and play a mallet, and then you stop the vibration with the hand, like this. Usually starts with a pickup. 1, 2, 1, and 2. Now I'm going to play a slightly more syncopated version of this. Not really syncopated, but just a little more groove in there. So I'm going to play all the downbeats, whether they're muffled or not, with a mallet, and I'm going to play little pickups with my hand. 16th pickup. 1, 2, 1. So when you hear this, now you know where it came from. The surdo, not to be confused with sourdough. Okay, next the tambourine. The tambourine is, like I said, it's a small frame drum. It's not like a tambourine that you shake, not like a European tambourine. But frame drums are around the world. They come in different sizes. It's played with a stick, and it's played on top, and it's held so that you can tap your finger underneath to echo the notes that you're playing. So I'm going to imitate that sound on the snare drum by turning the snares off and just tapping out a rhythm. So I'm going to play a rhythm that's a 2-bar phrase in 2/4 or 1 bar or 4/4. I'm going to start on the downbeat, and I'm going to anticipate into the second bar. This is really important. 1, 2, 1, and 2, and. See how that is? It's downbeat, upbeat, downbeat, upbeat. Now, quite a bit in Brazil, they play it the other way. So it's anticipating into it and then downbeat on the second bar. 1, 2, 1, 2, 2. that's really important to know that kind of phrasing when you play samba. Then you'll know how you can fit in with the melody, because the melody could be ba 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 da 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 da. You can hear that starting on the downbeat and anticipating in the second measure. So if I do that, it's ba 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 ba. And another melody like one da da ba da ba da ba 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 da ba da ba ba. So it anticipates in the first part of the phrase and then downbeat the second part. Now, there's another way of playing the tambourine, and this is mostly during the carnival. And you can see YouTube videos of this if you just look up, you know, like battery, the word for battery in Spanish is batería. Look at batería in carnival, and some YouTube videos will show up of these different teams playing percussion. And you can see that sometimes they play the tambourine and they twist the instrument like this. So what's going on there? So what happens is they're playing this phrase that's known as the fork. Why is it called the fork? It's got 3 notes in it, and you can't really tell if it's a triplet or a 16th, 8th, 16th. So it's not this. It's not this. It's something in between. So that's known in the Brazilian circles as the fork. And to get that phrase, that's different than the phrases I just outlined, because it's a 1-bar phrase. So this is really something that will help you play with people who aren't familiar with samba and make them feel comfortable. I think that's very important to know how to do that, to be adaptable to different groups. It reminds me of a story I always tell. I went back to Chicago and sat in with a group, and they said, "Hey, Mark's here, let's play a samba." So we started playing samba, and they weren't playing samba. I don't know what they were doing, but it was not samba. So I tried to enforce my real samba with disastrous results. It just wasn't happening. So I said, okay, I surrender, I'm just gonna go with them. And then the music started happening. So you just have to go with the flow to a certain extent. You can't enforce anything. It just doesn't work that way in music. Unless you're the leader, of course, and you can just fire people left and right. Don't worry, I won't be firing anybody in the band tonight, because they're brilliant. Anyway, so this fork phrase is often played in cafes using like a spoon and a saucer. You can play this like on little household objects. So I want to see if there's a household object that can play. Maybe that little plastic thing. Let me try it.